sure I will. I'm about to have an empty nest. She's there now, but she'll come home before she moves out for good. You would love it down here. It is hot. Super hot. You want warm.
I know. I can imagine.
She was right down the road, threw it out the window, hit the windshield back.
You sing over there too. Sing, I heard you sing.
Thought somebody strangled a cat
You
down
might
there.
have thought you were singing low, but I heard you. All right. Yeah, that's all right.
And that's, now, I'm not an eyewitness, but I understood that was true.
I'm glad that we're here, but this don't feel right.
Why?
Why? It just don't feel right. It feels weird.
We'll let you come back at 7:30.
I'll be with my other committee.
Yeah.
You have time for another committee people.
I'm all alone.
We're gonna outlaw Velcro. In the odd number grades.
I'll put the seconds up there next month for you. I'll hook you up. Bam.
I just need Dr. Williams standing back there going,
He's got his captain's cap on. Got his captain's cap on, so.
Stop that.
This time we should have already started, Dr. Fick.
behind schedule.
It just clicked. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. Members of the board and to the public, this meeting is being televised on Spectrum and Green Light Channel 22 and live streamed through the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel. The public can also view the meeting by downloading the WCSTV 22 app and through the links on the Wilson County Schools Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, and the Wilson County Schools website. Members of the board, you have the agenda before you. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I move that we approve the July 15th, 2024 Wilson County Board of Education meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the agenda be approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously, and I do need to acknowledge the fact that Mrs. Barnes is with us on Zoom, and which means that I will have to do a roll call of the vote in order to get her vote properly recorded. So with that motion being made, Mrs. Boyette? Aye. Mrs. Barnes? Aye. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion does carry unanimously. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence to be led by Mrs. Boyette. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Members of the board, you have before you in your packets the minutes of the May 13th, 2024 special board meeting and the June 3rd, 2024 regular board meeting. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the special meeting minutes of May 13th, 2024, and the regular board meeting of June 3rd, 2024.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes and seconded by Mrs. Boyette that the minutes of the May 13th, 2024 special board meeting and the June 3rd, 2024 regular board meeting be approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by your response. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Under the chairman's report, I'll be very brief. Though summer vacation period is here, we find that activity for our staff continues, and we thank thanks for the following events helping to showcase our system. First is to Jana Wenders and the students from Vic and Lucama Elementary Schools for their performance at the Juneteenth celebration in Raleigh, where the governor, Roy Cooper, and the second gentleman of the United States, Doug Emhoff, were in attendance. To the child nutrition staff for the food preparation and delivery of no-cost summer meals for all children ages 18 and under. Please be reminded that the Operation Backpack Drive is still active. This is an effort that was started in 2012 and continues to provide school supplies for our students. The deadline for donations is August the 1st, 2024, and we thank all who have contributed to date. And if you have not done so, I challenge each of you on the board to make your contribution. Amber, please see me at the end of the meeting for my contribution for the backpack drive. Our new school year begins in just one short month with the work days for our teachers, and on August the 26th, we'll welcome our students for the first day of school. We hope that everyone has had a safe and relaxing summer thus far, and that all will return rested and ready for a new year. We hope that everybody stays safe and hydrated in this heat that we're experiencing in what remains of our summer. That concludes the chairman's report. Dr. Mills, superintendent's report, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, board members, audience members. Dr. Fitch covered two items. I would pick up on one item for the no-cost summer meals. Again, thanks to Child Nutrition for the work they're doing, especially with the logistics and the heat to make that happen. Those meal sites are Hearn, Lucama, Vic, and Wales. That's from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And we also have mobile routes with stops in some locations, and those information about those sites are on our district website and social media sites, and that's for the use of federal funds. And so, again, thanks to Child Nutrition staff for that. That is very important. I would like to point out, we're not talking about the opening of school yet. It's just too soon. We're in July. We don't want to panic anymore than we are right now, trying to get things ready, but I hope everyone is having a good summer. And I would point out that we're missing some faces tonight. Dr. Wilson and Miss May and Dr. Williams are on vacation with their families this week, and I directed them not to come back and attend the meeting. So with your permission, you can get me later, but they needed that time away, and so in their absence, I'm covering their areas. So they're enjoying some time with their families. Madam Chair, that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the public input session, where the public has the opportunity to present to the board information that may be of interest. We have one person signed up, Dr. Charles Bayo, school policy question. I do not see Dr. Bayo in attendance. Therefore, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion, information items, as well as action items. And under information items, we have two contracts requiring board notification. Notification because both of these contracts are under the threshold, according to our policy, under $90,000, so the administration will be presenting those contracts for your information. Dr. Mills?
Yes, ma'am. Board members, the first contract is under administrative services. For information, is for a walk-in freezer at Vic Elementary School. That's through Singer T&L. That contract amount is $37,098.96. Ms. Amber is here in case you have any questions. None? Okay. The other items deal with instructional services.
Okay.
For those items requiring notification of instructional services, we have three. For Behavior Operations LLC, that is for behavior consultation services, observations, staff training, and other related services. That is an amount not to exceed $80,000. We have used them in the past. That is another separate contract across the new school year, but we have used them in the past for those services. The second contract is with Getty Psychology. That's for psychological testing services. And again, that contract is not to exceed $80,000. We have used them in the past. And the last contract for notification and instructional services is Pathful Inc. Is the business, and it is for Pathful Explorer renewal for 5 middle schools and 4 high schools and 2 early colleges in the amount of $34,200.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
For high schools,
Mm-hmm.
we have 3.
Early college.
No, it says, and 2 early colleges. So I want to know where our
And that
4th high
includes
school.
The virtual,
It'll be
The
the
virtual?
virtual school.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Marks? I believe so. That's what
Did
I've
he
got
say
down.
yes?
Mhm.
Okay,
That's
so
all I
the
got down.
virtual, so waive, okay. All right, thank you. Any questions in regard to those contracts? Mrs. Boyette?
What's the path for? Is that having anything to do with the labs, the?
The description I've got is this platform for career exploration and career development plans.
Okay.
That one, and we've used that one for a couple of years, and they do have the digital career exploration videos, career goals, and that kind of piece. So it is a continuation. in
I
that
saw the
sense.
lab, I think, at Forest Hills or at one of, okay.
Yep.
Other questions in regard to these contracts? Hearing none, we'll move down to the action items. We have 5 items under that, contracts that do require board approval, as well as year-end budget amendments, Nick's back contribution, and a resolution on prioritizing public schools and early childhood education. Dr. Mills?
Yes, Madam Chair. First, under contracts requiring approval under administrative services, the first item is for Cisco of Raleigh, and that's distributor lot 1 for groceries. That is in the amount of $2,701,666.95. And again, Ms. Amber's here to go over that information, and we have that contract in case you need it.
Can you explain to me what distributor lot 1 versus lot 3,
Lot one
growth
is just-
supplies?
It's food only, just anything that involves food, and then lot 3 is
All supplies?
All supplies, paper, utensils, cups, bowls.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Which leads us to the second item, which is Cisco of Raleigh Distributor Lot 3, which, as you know, is papers and other things like that.
Thank you so
I know,
much.
just happen to be on top of things lately, which I have no idea, in the amount of $343,910.79.
Okay,
Thank you, Amber, that's why you're here. So those 2 items. And the last item under administrative services, which requires board approval, just came in today, is from Joseph Motors Incorporated out of Raleigh. Also covers the area of child nutrition. Is for the purchase of a used 2011 Ford box truck with refrigeration, a little over 15,000 miles. The reason we brought it today was there's only a 10-day hold offer on that. This is something we've been searching for quite some time. We did have 3 quotes, 3 possibilities overall. And this amount and $110,482.54 does include the $45,000 charge for the conversion for the refrigeration. And this is out of Raleigh, it is a trusted vendor, has clean Carfax, and is a recommendation from the administration.
Is this for delivery between the schools or primarily for
No.
summer deliveries or what?
No, well, it is, we do use a truck for summer, but it's actually, we're allotted so much money from USDA, and we have roughly around $300,000 of food in our warehouse that we get out weekly. We make deliveries weekly to all the schools.
Okay,
And then summertime, we kind of, if the freezer goes down, we go and bring the food back to the warehouse, and
okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, those do require board approval, and that's
Yes.
all for
Madam
administrative
Chair.
services.
Mr. Mercer?
I move the full board approve, Cisco Raleigh, distributor lot one groceries, $2,701,666.95. And Cisco Raleigh distributor lot three supplies, $343,910.79. And Joseph Motors Incorporated in Raleigh, for the refrigeration truck at $110,482.54, as recommended by administration.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the full board approve the Cisco Raleigh Distributor Lot 1 groceries contract at $2,701,666.95. The Cisco Raleigh contract for Distributor Lot 3 supplies for $343,910.79. And the Joseph Motors Incorporated of Raleigh for a box truck with refrigeration in the amount of $110,482.54. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we're at item C, the 2023-2024 year-end budget amendments.
Chair.
Yep, got
Oh,
one
I'm
more
sorry.
There's a B we've not done yet.
I've got to do,
I apologize, getting ahead of myself. Contract requiring approval for instructional services.
yes, Madam Chair, we have one contract in that area. The business is Lexia Learning Systems LLC, and it would provide the student subscriptions and school success partnership renewals for the Core 5 for the Reading District, success partnership at the gold level. Again, that is another indication of a contract that is not an extension, but the same one as last year. You were provided an updated cost that reflects a slight change and reduction from what was provided with the packets. Then that contract amount is $197,940. And again, that's something we've used in the past, and you have the revised contract cost on your sheet.
All right? Members of the
Madam,
board-
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I move that the board approve the contract with Lexia Learning Systems LLC for student subscriptions and school success partnership renewals at $197,940.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by both Mrs. Powell and Mr. Breen, that the board approve the Alexia Learning Systems LLC contract for student subscriptions and school services, school success partnership renewal in the amount of $197,940. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, back on track for the 2023-2024 year-end budget amendments.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you all for your support of the contracts. This time I'll turn it over to Ms. Collins to handle the year-end budget amendments for our various fund sources.
Okay, board members, the budget amendments that you have.
You might need to turn on your mic.
Just press the button.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, board members, the budget amendments that you have before you are the year-end budget amendments. They're to balance the budget to the actual expenditures for the state, local, federal, and special revenue funds for the year ending 23-24 school year. Are there any questions?
Board members, are there any questions in regard to the year-end budget amendments that have been presented to you? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion in regard to the year-end budget amendments for 2023-2024.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer,
I move that the board approve the 2023-2024 year-end budget amendments as recommended by administration.
Second.
it has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mr. Boykin, and was that Ms. Powell over there? It- I think that must have been Mr. Breen then. That we approve the budget amendments for the year end for 2023-2024 for the State Public School Fund, the local current expense fund, the federal expense fund, and the local special revenue fund. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is the North Carolina School Board's Action Center 2024-2025 contribution request.
Board members, annually you receive a statement from the School Board Association with the request for provide support for their legislative agenda and supporting NCSBA membership that's approved at the Delegate Assembly. The request is for a $5,000 contribution for a district our size. That information is attached on the contribution statement based on allotted ADM. And so at this point, the board needs to discuss what, if any, contribution you'd like to make.
What did we give them last year?
We gave them the request amount, I think it was the same amount.
Well, I think we certainly need to have a voice up there. So I'm not opposed to the requested amount.
I'm not opposed to either because it's a volunteer association, membership association, and they do all they can to help with teacher pay and with our pension spiking and all of our, salaries and legislative, yes, agenda, definitely. So I have no problem with that because we did it last year. So I agree to go ahead and do the same thing this year.
Is that in the form of a motion, or is there more discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I move that we take action and give the contribution of $5,000 to the North Carolina School Board's Action Center as requested.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we contribute to the North Carolina School Board's Action Center the requested amount of $5,000 for the 2024-2025 year. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please give your response. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We're next at item E, the resolution on prioritizing public schools and early childhood education.
Board members, in your packets, you have received the resolution on supporting the prioritization of public schools and opposing unaccountable taxpayer-funded private school vouchers that's been drafted by the Office of the Governor, which is focused on prioritizing public schools and early childhood education. Some of the main points the governor's put out has been that for the past 6 months, Governor Cooper has been visiting public schools and early childhood education programs across the state to highlight the things that our public schools are doing and early childhood programs are doing and it's asking North Carolinians to tell others about how important, as you well know, our public schools are, and to encourage their legislators to prioritize public schools and early childhood education. And as part of that, the governor is seeking for school boards, public schools to present this resolution as part of the support for that. And this resolution is presented to the board for consideration of adoption.
All right. Members of the board, you have had the opportunity to read this. Do you want it read officially into the record, or would you like it to be placed with the minutes of the meeting? And what is your pleasure? Mr. Breen?
Placed with the minutes for the meeting.
Place with the minutes for the meeting, all right? And what is the pleasure of the board in regard to this resolution?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move that we adopt the resolution on prioritizing public schools and early childhood education.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that the full board approve the resolution on prioritizing public schools and early childhood education. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your response. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
Madam Chair, one thing in the governor's note to the school systems and boards of education was to encourage school boards to share this information with their Board of County Commissioners to adopt as well. Now that the board has adopted it, would the board like for me to share this with the county manager on behalf of the county commissioners? Totally up to the board.
Members of the board, you've heard the request coming from the superintendent as to what your pleasure is in regard to sharing the resolution with the county commissioners, as they have also been asked to speak to this issue. What is your pleasure?
I would think that would be very wise.
Okay.
I concur with Ms. Boyd.
I
So is
agree.
that in the form of a motion, Mrs. Boyette?
Yes, I move that we share the resolution with the county commissioners for consideration of adoption.
We all
Second.
seconded it down here.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Boyette and seems
Group
like
second.
seconded by this end of the table.
Group second.
By Mrs. Powell, Mr. Green, Mr. Mercer. You want to be in that second as well, Mr. Boykin? I will. Okay, and Mr. Boykin, it's a unanimous. What about you, Ms. Barnes?
I'll be a third.
Okay, well, no, we're gonna make it a unanimous second that we forward this to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration. I don't think there's any further discussion, so I will ask, would you please record your vote? Mrs. Barnes?
Aye. Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye. Just
Mr. Mr. Boykin? Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Dr. Mills, if you would forward this to Mr. Hunt for consideration by the Board of County Commissioners, it would be appreciated.
Yes, Madam Chair, I will.
Mrs. Barnes?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318, 11A, 1 and 6, and 115C-319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318, 11A, 1, and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402, and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318, 11A, 3.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A, 1 and 6, and 115C-319 through 321, to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20, United States Code 1232G, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyett?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We are now adjourned to closed session.